Close your eyes for just a moment. Not because this is a meditation, not because you need to calm down, but because somewhere, right now, someone is sitting in a room, maybe with other people around them, maybe completely alone, and they are thinking about you so completely that everything else in their world has gone quiet. They are not reaching out. They are not saying your name, but they are holding you in their mind like something they cannot afford to put down and cannot afford to keep carrying. And some part of you, the part that brought you here today, already feels that. That part of you is not wrong. There is something Carl Jung said that most people hear and then quietly forget because it is too uncomfortable to hold for long. He said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, not to accept the version of yourself that others see, not the version you perform for the world. The full self, the self that loves without permission, the self that wants without apology, the self that feels a pull toward one specific person at 3 in the morning when all the reasons it should not exist have stopped being loud enough to drown it out. What you are about to understand today is not about them. Not entirely. It is about what happens inside a woman when she becomes the object of that kind of consuming, hidden devotion, and why it does not feel like a gift, why it feels, more often, like a wound she cannot locate, like grief for something she never fully had, like the ghost of a love story that is happening in real time, just out of reach. Let us begin where the truth actually lives. There is a person in your life, or someone just outside the edges of your life, who has been taken over by thoughts of you. And I do not mean this in a passive, abstract way. I mean the kind of taken over where they are having a conversation with someone else, and suddenly your face arrives in their mind without warning, and they lose the thread of what they were saying. The kind where they drive a familiar route and somehow end up thinking about something you once said, something small and ordinary, and it lands in them like it meant everything. The kind where they reach for their phone to text you and then put it down because the risk of actually reaching you feels more frightening than the ache of staying silent. They are consumed by you, and they are choosing every single day not to let you know. Now, the first question most women ask when they feel this dynamic, when they sense that invisible thread pulling between themselves and someone who will not speak, is why? Why would someone feel this much and say this little? Why would someone hold this carefully and reach out this rarely? Why would love, or whatever this is, make someone go so quiet? And the answer lives inside something Jung spent his entire life trying to name. He called it the shadow. Not in the way the word is used carelessly now, as though it simply means the bad parts of a person. The shadow, in Jungian terms, is everything that a person has been taught they cannot be. Everything that does not fit the identity they have carefully constructed for the world to see. Every feeling that was too inconvenient, too dangerous, too soft, or too wild to live in the open. Over time, these feelings do not disappear. They go underground. They become the hidden architecture of who a person is when no one is watching. And here is where you enter the story. You became, for this person, the door to everything they buried. You did not do this intentionally. You did not set out to represent their unlived life. But something about you, the way you speak, the way you think, the way you carry yourself without needing anyone to validate it. Something about the specific texture of who you are, cracked, something open in them that they had spent years keeping closed. This is why the connection feels the way it does. Heavy, unfinished, like a sentence that never quite reaches its period. Because for them, acknowledging what they feel for you is not simply a matter of admitting attraction. It is a matter of admitting everything they have suppressed. Everything they told themselves they did not need. Every compromise they made to stay safe. Every version of themselves they allowed to fade quietly because it was easier than fighting for it. You are not just someone they want. You are someone who made them remember who they were before they became who they thought they had to be. That is a terrifying thing to be for another person. And it is an even more terrifying thing to feel when the other person keeps choosing distance. Let us talk about what that distance actually is, because this is where most women misread the situation entirely, and the misreading costs them something they cannot afford to lose. Distance is not indifference, but it can feel so much like it that the difference stops mattering. When this person pulls back, when they go quiet, when they are present with you and then suddenly seem very far away, the story that writes itself in your mind is often the same story, that you imagined it, that you wanted it to be more than it was, that the connection you felt was one-sided, constructed from your own longing rather than from something real between you. But that story is not the truth. And I think if you are honest with yourself right now, you already know it is not the truth, because longing does not feel like this. Longing for something that does not exist feels hollow. It feels like an echo inside an empty room. What you feel when you think about this person does not feel like an echo. It feels like contact, like something living. The distance is not about the absence of feeling. It is about the size of the feeling, and what standing inside it would require them to surrender. Jung wrote about what he called the persona, the mask a person builds to move through the world. It is not a bad thing, this mask. Everyone has one. It is the face you wear for your family, your colleagues, the people who need you to be a certain way, so that the ecosystem you all share can keep functioning. The persona is how we survive in relationship with other people. The problem is when the persona becomes the prison. When a person has worn their mask so long and so consistently that they cannot remember what is underneath it, or they remember too well, and the memory is the very thing they are most afraid of. This person has a mask. You have seen behind it, maybe only once, maybe only in small moments that you keep returning to in your mind. The moment they laughed in a way that was completely unguarded. The moment they said something true without calculating how it would land. The moment they looked at you and did not look away immediately, and in that pause there was something unspoken that made the air between you feel different. Those moments are not imaginary. They are the shadow breaking through the surface. They are this person, their real self, the one that exists underneath all the control and the caution and the carefully maintained life, reaching for you without permission. And then the mask comes back. And the distance returns. And you are left holding the memory of that moment like evidence you are not sure anyone else would believe. This is the push and pull that has been making you question your own perception. This is the cycle that exhausts you without ever fully resolving. And understanding it does not make it less painful, but it does make it less personal. Because what is happening in those moments of withdrawal has almost nothing to do with you and almost everything to do with the war happening inside them. Let us be precise about what that war looks like, because it matters. On one side of the war is the life they have already built, the commitments they made before you arrived, the relationships, the routines, the identity, the image of themselves as someone who does not blow up everything they have worked for because of a feeling. That side is loud. It has logic on its side. It has practicality. It has the weight of every person in their life who would not understand, who would be hurt, who would look at them differently. On the other side is you. Not you as a person entirely, but what you represent. The unlived version of themselves, the emotional honesty they have been starving for, the specific quality of being known, truly known, by someone who does not need them to perform. And every time they think about reaching for you, both sides of that war speak at once, and the noise is deafening. So they choose silence, because silence feels like control. And right now, control is the only thing standing between them and a complete unraveling of the self they have taken years to construct. What I want you to understand, what I need you to hold tightly as we go deeper, is that this is not a story where you are waiting for them to choose you. That framing is one of the oldest and most damaging narratives women have been handed about love. The idea that the most meaningful thing you can do is make yourself available enough, patient enough, understanding enough that eventually someone will decide you are worth the risk. You are already worth the risk. That has never been the question. The question, the one that actually matters, is what this dynamic is doing to you. And I think you know the answer. I think you have known for a while, and you have been afraid to say it out loud because saying it makes it real. You have started to organize your life around someone who is not fully in it. Small ways. The way you check your phone with a specific kind of attention. The way certain songs or certain places carry a weight they did not used to carry. The way you have quiet conversations with this person in your head that are sometimes more real to you than the conversations you have with people who are actually present. The way you have started to feel most like yourself in the imagined space of what could be rather than the actual space of what is. This is not weakness. This is not foolishness. This is what happens when a genuine connection gets trapped in impossible circumstances, and the only place it can fully exist is inside you. You become the keeper of it, and keeping it starts to shape everything. Jung had a word for this kind of interior life that grows wild and uncontained when there is no external place for it to go. He called it the anima, in its most activated form, the inner life that becomes so vivid, so real, so complete in itself, that the external world starts to feel like the less real of the two realities. The interior love story becomes more real than your actual life, and that is the quiet danger inside a connection like this. Not that the feeling is fake, but that you can love something so completely in your inner world that you stop noticing how much of your actual, lived, breathing life is passing while you tend to a flame that has not been given air. This is not meant to diminish what you feel. It is meant to return you to yourself, because here is the second truth, the one that sits underneath all of this and is harder to reach but more important to understand. You were not brought to this feeling by accident. You were brought here by something in you that is trying to grow. Jung believed that the people who pull us most powerfully are not random. They are mirrors. They show us the parts of ourselves we have not fully claimed yet. The parts we have left unintegrated, unlived, unnamed. What does this person mirror in you? Not what do they represent romantically, but psychologically, soulfully. What part of you do they call forward that you have not yet given a full and permanent home in your own life? Because that is the real work. That is the hidden assignment inside this connection that looks on the surface like it is only about love and longing and two people who cannot quite reach each other. This person arrived in part to introduce you to yourself. There is a version of you that this connection has been slowly activating, a version of you that has less patience for half-presence, that is less willing to accept emotional unavailability as a love language, that has a harder time pretending that something is enough when everything inside her knows it is not. She has been getting louder lately, hasn't she? That part of you, the one that is tired, the one that sees very clearly now, maybe more clearly than she is entirely comfortable with, what real connection feels like, and how rarely it has actually been offered to her by the people she has allowed closest. That is not this person's doing. They did not create that awareness, but they unlocked it. They gave it a face. They gave it a feeling to point to and say, this is what I mean. This is what I have been trying to name. This quality of being seen without having to explain yourself first. This feeling of being known beyond the surface without having to perform for it. This is what I have been hungry for. And now that you know the name of the hunger, you cannot unknow it. This is the part of the story where I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it rather than answering immediately. If this person never fully steps forward, if the circumstances never resolve, if the distance never closes, what then? Not as a tragedy, not as a catastrophe, but as a legitimate possibility to be reckoned with, honestly. Because the love, or whatever we are calling this, is real. That part is not in question. Real feeling does not require a particular outcome to be valid. It does not need to become a relationship to have mattered. It does not need to be returned in exactly the form you wish for in order to have changed you in ways that are permanent and true. But you are a person, a whole, living, real person who deserves to be chosen openly, without apology, without being kept as a private thought. Someone is too afraid to speak aloud. And the question of what you deserve is not separate from this story. It is the center of it. Jung wrote about what he called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming fully oneself, not the self that parents, partners, or culture designed. The self that emerges when all the borrowed definitions fall away and what remains is purely, authentically you. The full interior person who has spent years accumulating experiences, wounds, realizations, and quiet revolutions. This connection, the longing, the distance, the push and pull, is part of your individuation. It is asking you to do the most difficult thing a person can do. It is asking you to hold space for what is real inside you while also refusing to disappear into it, to feel everything without being consumed by it, to love without losing yourself in the waiting, to know the difference between devotion and dissolution. Because the version of you who simply waits, who puts her own life on hold for someone else's readiness, who makes herself smaller and quieter and more available, that version of you is not the one this connection is trying to call forward. She is the one it is trying to release. The version of you this connection is trying to reach is the one who can say, without cruelty and without apology, I feel this completely, and I am not willing to live only in the feeling. I am not willing to be a thought someone returns to in the dark and leaves there when the light comes back. I deserve presence. I deserve someone who can meet me in the open, not only in the hidden places of their own interior world. That is not a rejection of what you feel. It is the highest form of respect for it. Now, about this person, the one who is consumed by thoughts of you, but cannot yet step fully into the light of them. They are going to face a reckoning, not because of you, not because of anything you do or stop doing, but because this is how the psyche works. The shadow does not stay underground indefinitely. The self that has been buried eventually pushes back toward the surface, with a force that's proportional to how long it has been suppressed. The more they hold this feeling down, the more powerful it becomes. The more they construct their life around avoiding the truth, the louder the truth gets. This does not mean they will choose you. That is not a promise anyone can make. The shadow breaking through does not guarantee a particular action. Sometimes people feel the earthquake inside them and still choose to rebuild the same walls. Sometimes people recognize their unlived life and decide the cost of living it is more than they are willing to pay. But something will shift, whether they move toward you or deeper into what they have built. Something in them will be permanently different because of what you opened, because of the version of them that woke up when they were around you. You cannot put that back to sleep. It does not work that way. And here is the final thing I want to leave you with, the thing that matters most, that sits underneath all of the psychology and the analysis and the careful language. You are not a supporting character in this story. You are not the muse who exists to awaken someone else's truth and then wait in the margins to see how they use it. You are the main character of your own interior journey. And this connection, as real and as consuming and as meaningful as it is one chapter in that journey. It is not the whole book. The part of you that has been awake in this feeling, the part that recognizes something true when she hears it, that refuses to pretend that surface is the same as depth, that cannot go back to the emotional numbness of before. She is not dependent on this one person to have a life that feels real and alive and worth the specific, particular, irreplaceable experience of being inside it. She can build that life. She is already building it. In the very act of paying attention to what she feels instead of dismissing it. In the very act of refusing to settle for the pale version of connection when she has tasted the real thing, she is becoming the person who can actually receive what she is looking for. Do not shrink back into waiting. Do not make your life smaller to fit inside someone else's indecision. Feel this completely. Honor it completely. And then, with that same complete attention, turn it toward your own becoming. Because the love you are capable of, the depth you carry, the quality of presence you bring, these are not things to be held privately in someone else's mind. They are things to be met fully, in the open, by someone who does not need to hide how much you matter. That person exists. They may or may not be the one who is consuming your thoughts right now, but they exist. And the clearer you become about what you truly need and what you are truly worth, the more impossible it becomes for anything less to feel like enough. You came here today because something in you is awake, because something in you recognized that this feeling is real and it deserves to be understood, not dismissed, not explained away, not buried. That instinct is correct, trust it, and then take it home, into your actual, breathing, present life, not just the interior one. That is where the real story begins.